Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon panel of Casual Connect. My name is Gabby, Dizon, CEO and co-founder of Altitude Games, and we've got a really good superstar panel this afternoon to talk about Southeast Asia publishing. So we've gathered 5 of the most experienced publishers operating in Southeast Asia, and we're going to hear their thoughts on whether is it time for this region to shine. Okay, so let's start with brief introductions about yourselves and your company. Who wants to go first? Quang?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Quang, co-founder and CEO of Appota. We are the distribution platform for mobile content for smartphone. We start our business with making a app store, and then we distribute alternative store to support the developer in local and international to come to Vietnam. And then we grow up our business with the game publishing and advertising and payments as well. So our platform has more than 18 million users from Vietnam, and around the world will be maybe 4 million more, and Indonesia as well is very strong as well. We are doing all kind of business to support for the publishing game and very focused in game in Vietnam. And we have from the distribution, from the publishing, support publishing, media, operation as well, and also the payment and other stuff related to the offline event or something like that in Vietnam. And we consider as a top 3 the local game publisher in Vietnam as well, but that is our game company only. But to United, and in short introduction, we are the platform help you can distribute. That's all the best.
Okay, Niel?
My name is Niel. I'm the general manager of Playlab. I manage the Manila studio. So Playlab is both a developer and a publisher. We have production offices both in the Philippines, Manila, and in Bangkok, Thailand. So, but we publish on a global level. So we publish mostly in the Western market first, but we're also very strong in the Southeast Asian region, well, except Vietnam. But in other countries, like, simply because we're located there.
Hi, my name is David. I was the former CEO of GoGame Asia. That was 10 months ago. So I started a new company 10 months ago called GoGame. So I'm the CEO and founder of GoGame. We are invested by Sega and Incubate Fund of Japan. We publish globally. We have 4 core pillars in our business. One would be a publishing platform. The second would be a payment gateway. The third is a virtualization platform for streaming. I'm going to have a talk about that tomorrow, 1 p.m. So if you're interested in that, you could come and listen to what we have. What was the fourth one? Let me think. Too many business. So I'll get back to that. Yeah, so our aim is to conquer the world and have fun doing it.
Great aim. Good luck with that. Don?
Hi guys, my name is Don. We have 2 companies as listed over there. So we started off as a game developer based out of Singapore. We turned 5, I think, about 1 or 2 weeks ago, called Daylight Studios, and we opened so we definitely know the pains of a developer. And then we moved into publishing, so we started a company called QuestDrop. So QuestDrop has 2 business models. One is the standard traditional publishing we represent for Southeast Asia. We talk about the 6 countries. But the core countries would be Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. And QuestDrop also a second business, which is the publishing infrastructure business, where we support publishers launching games into Southeast Asia. We handle operations, customer support, payment, localization, and of course marketing and influencer marketing, which is one of the key products that we have. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Thank you.
I'm Robin from Asiasoft. I would say among all, I think I'm one of the oldest game publishers in Southeast Asia. We have been around for 15 years. We started from PC online game, which we are still doing. And over the last few years, we had extended our product line into mobile games. So Asiasoft has a physical office presence in all the 6 key countries in Southeast Asia. And over the years, we have accumulated a huge user base with coming to 150 million registered users with us, and For me, my role basically is looking into international business, game sourcing, game acquisition, and also mobile games strategy and expansion.
Okay, thanks so much for the intros. Okay, so for our first question, I think a lot of the people who go to Casual Connect specifically, they're very interested in the Southeast Asian market. And you've probably attended enough talks where saying Southeast Asia is made up of different markets, different cultures. And it seems like there is no like one approach to Southeast Asia publishing. So my first question is, like for your company specifically, what is your approach to publishing in Southeast Asia, starting probably with your home market, and what's your approach to other markets around the region? Maybe let's start with Quang.
Yes, so we started a business with distribution. That means we help other people to bring more revenue besides Google Play and iTunes in Vietnam. So from that, but we see a huge demand from our partner. They need localization. They need the local partner to support them, not just only to distribute their client. And then we found our game team to support to do the core publishing first, and we learn from that. And then we starting building and sourcing game by ourselves and bring the game in, and then we do within our resort in Vietnam, and also acquire more our resort outside for the market. And we started with the Vietnam first, and in end of 2014, we invest for some studio in Vietnam like Joy Entertainment, and then we take the game Captain's Choice from them to publish global. But actually, we more focus in Southeast Asia, where is the Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia is very quite active market for that. And we are able to get more than 3 million users for that game, but not so much revenue, I must say. Because it's a kind of a shooting game and esports, so people go in and play and they enjoy it, but no pay. So our project with them continue for more than a year, and we get a lot of users from that. But from the publishing game with no revenue in expectation for that kind of project, we know a lot for the Southeast Asia market, where is local payment is play very important role in the publishing, and the localization and culturalization is also very important for different countries. So you can say that if you come bring a game to Vietnam with a Western style, I'm definitely say that there's very no revenue for that. But if you change a little bit into the cartoon or manga style from Japan, yeah, it can earn amount of money. But the most favorite from user in Vietnam is a Kung Fu style and following the Chinese style from that, and MMORPG and hardcore. So different country had different kind of user base segment. Vietnam is a mid-core to hardcore. Indonesia is a casual and also had a hardcore, but that is so big. So compared to Vietnam, it's more than user to play hardcore game. Thailand, they prefer casual and up to the hardcore as well, but they're not competitive in the game. I mean, they don't want to kill people as well in some kind of game like that. Singapore, Malaysia, or Philippines. Philippines is quite different also because Philippines is looking at the Western style, and Malaysia can be affected by the Chinese style as well. But general, let's say, different country, different way of the approach to market. So we learn from that as well, and we only focus on where we're strong is Vietnam and Indonesia.
Okay,
so
thanks.
That's the old.
Thank you, Quang. Niel, I think you have a very different approach to publishing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, actually, traditionally, when we talk about the Southeast Asian market for the past 4 years, we've been using Southeast Asian market, like not this year, like the previous years, as more of a test bed when we launch games into the West. So we used it as a soft launch market where we do retention tests, well, primarily retention tests more than monetization tests. It's been like that for the years in the past, but you know, the Southeast Asian market is also one of the fastest growing. So we've been seeing like 30 to 50% year-on-year growth, especially for mobile casual, and especially since Google Play is now opening up like a lot of payment gateways into these countries. So it actually got to a point that, you know, as we were doing soft launch tests, well, you know, it hasn't been profitable in the past, except maybe for Singapore, where, you know, you have a higher revenue per user. But more recently, it has gotten to a point where it started. If you optimize the campaign enough, and if you have the right product, and if the game is social enough, especially in countries like the Philippines and Thailand, where people are very like social addicts or social media addicts, it has gotten to a point where it has started becoming profitable for us, especially if you talk about the top 3 countries in Southeast Asia, which is Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia.
Okay. Now I remember what my 4th pillar is. It's a free advertising network. It's called Nova Pass. It was launched by Sega in Japan, and today it has 135 million users registered in Japan. It's more than the population of Japan. My job is to take that and globalize that, to bring it to the world. The approach to Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is this year expected to be over $1 billion in revenue. I think that has more than doubled from the previous year. And next year, according to some of the reports I read, it's going to double again to over 2 billion. And growth on mobile handsets is about 49%, where iPad is probably about 43%, or tablets in general. So I would like to be in the fastest growing market in the world. That's why we choose Southeast Asia. One of the big problems with publishing is user acquisition costs. And user acquisition costs in this region is still relatively low as compared to the more competitive markets, say, of Japan, which is between $10 to $15 per CPI, or in the States, $7 to $10, right? Or Europe, it's still really high in those territories. So with the growth of the market and looking at relatively low cost in this region, it's time for us to go take care of the customers. And one of the credos in my company is to obsess over the customers. Over a period of 30 days, most of the time you lose 90% of all your users. And yet, a lot of the times we neglect those users. So in 10 months, I've set up 6 countries, 6 offices, and hired 100 people. And all these people have one aim, is to take care of the users, take care of the whales, take care of the spenders, also take care of the community in general. And that's why I'm having local presence in every single country, because the marketing, the community management, the customer service, and all that has to be local. So while thinking global or while thinking regional, we have to be very sensitive about how we manage culturalization, localization, and also the different, like Quang was talking about, mid-core, hardcore. We bring the right titles to the right market with the right support, right? The key business for us at this moment in the startup phase is to take the 130, 140 developers on Nova Pass in Japan with over 600 titles and take that and bring them to Southeast Asia. And the first problem we will solve for them is payment, right? The ability to rapidly launch the title, put it onto the region, service the customer, acquire users relatively efficiently and with low cost. And for example, Philippines, credit card penetration is 3%. Although Google now probably has signed up a few telco payment channels, we want to be that ability for developers to sign one contract and reach out to 200 countries around the world, right? A lot of the users want to pay, they just don't have ability to pay. And when you look at past records from the 6, 7 titles that I've published in the last few years, I see that that payment is at least 20 to 30% of the total revenues coming from Apple and Google. So third-party payment channels on third-party stores is really important for this part of the world.
Thanks, David.
All right, so let's talk about, okay, thank you. And I actually agree with a lot with David in terms of taking care of the users. I mean, if today, if you were to launch a game into Japan or into Korea or into Germany, for example, would you care about those users as much as you would care about the users in Southeast Asia? For a lot of companies, the answer is that they would give a lot of emphasis on these tier 1 countries. And because Southeast Asia doesn't have as much revenue compared to these tier 1 countries, companies are just doing marketing. They don't really care. And one of the things that we focus on, and similar to David, is that we have all these local operations. Like right now, we have a Singapore and a Thai office. We're officially opening up our Indonesia office next month. And we really want to take care of these users. It doesn't matter whether it's a minnow or a dolphin or a whale, you want to give them the same amount of care. And in exchange for that, you would naturally see higher retentions, higher conversions, and higher ARPU. And so back to the question about what do we do in terms of the approach for publishing. And I also agree with Tran about the kinds of genres and the kinds of the themes of the games that are popular in different countries. I think you need to take care of that. A lot of publishers make the mistake and think that Southeast Asia is one country, and that's not true. Each country has a different flavor that they like. One of the themes that we emphasize on is actually the 2D manga kind of anime, otaku style games that we believe has a strong presence. Japanese culture has definitely penetrated this region. So that's one of the kind of titles that we look for. But besides that, I mean, besides just selecting the right titles, just the localization, just the culturalization. Like recently, we did. Thailand celebrated Songkran, which is one of the biggest holidays and festivals of the year for them. And running events to make sure that you take care of the users at the time is important. And in exchange for that, people will spend. So I think the approach here really is to localize everything, to localize your entire approach to this region. And if you're not setting up your own branch offices in Southeast Asia, or you're not working with the relevant partners, you find that you're not going to get the performance that you think that the performance that you want. And then after that, you just say, well, Southeast Asia is not a market for me. In terms of whether is it time, the marketing prices, the CPI prices, have been steadily going up in Southeast Asia, and we can see that. And in terms of the amount of marketing inventory in this region, it's pretty sad. There's a lot of story behind exactly why this region doesn't have a lot of inventory. And I'm talking about high quality inventory. So companies are looking to alternative sources of marketing. One of the products that we have, the influencer marketing, we find has a sizable performance improvement over Facebook. Some of the campaigns we've run have got 3x ROI compared to just Facebook marketing. And the prices are just lower because this is not as mature of a product as Japan or Korea. So understanding how things work in Southeast Asia is not just about, okay, so I see that there are lots of Facebook users in Indonesia, or that Line is the most popular social messaging app in Thailand. It's about doing something about it. And when you start looking at that, then you really have a strategy with it. Thanks.
Robin?
So, well, my four fellow associates has basically mentioned everything that.
Don't worry, you'll go first for the next question.
So, a gaming company that is interested to publish their games or develop games for Southeast Asia. So, Southeast Asia is 11 countries, but our focus is only on the key 6. And for the key 6, everyone has different language, different culture, different playing behavior, consumer preference, etc. So, as what David and Don have said, you need to take special care of them. So they will pay. Because Southeast Asia, our pay rate is very low. And one thing, our currency exchange rate compared to USD, oh, that's miserable, I tell you. So, and one thing for Southeast Asia, marketing cost has been increasing a lot. We are very unique because we are like a midpoint where I always say is that we are East meeting West. So we can accept Western influence games, Western influence media, not just like Philippines, they like more US stuff, but Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, we can take in all the US or Western stuff. And for the East, we watch Korean drama, which is very popular across Southeast Asia right now. We watch Japanese manga, anime, we also look at Chinese variety show or even dramas. So we are a region that accepts everything, everything goes. So unlike certain countries, like if you are in China, anything that's not non-Chinese, basically it's like, oh, it's not a preferred genre or preferred title or thing that I'll take up. For Southeast Asia, we can do everything. So it makes it more complex, more competitive. Everyone can just jump in. That actually drive up a lot of the cost on marketing for Southeast Asia right now. If you compare the CPI rate 2 years ago and now, actually 2 years ago I can buy a CPI in less than $, 50 cents or 30 cents. Right now, anything is above $1 for effective CPI. So that's why for established publishers in Southeast Asia, we are not going to fight head-to-head very strongly on CPI with a lot of big corporations like Netmarble has published a few games in Southeast Asia. They've been doing a lot of advertising. They are actually like the first to do TV advertising in Thailand. They even buy up primetime slots. They even, remember, Get Rich? They actually bought an episode on TV, which features comedians, playing their games, and that attracted a lot of attention. So basically, that they have set a lot of benchmark, and a lot of global publishers are actually pushing for that. But for established local publishers, first thing is we had our user base, and actually we care for our user base, and that's where we get higher retention, we get very good loyalty, and in terms of ARPU spending, definitely we are much higher because they know us. We are there for them in each country. Overseas publishers, global publishers, some come and go. So players don't really feel affiliation to the company. For example, like Asiasoft, we have been established in Thailand for 15 years. Honestly, there are actually players coming to our office every day making complaints.
Sounds great.
Yeah, same for all of us, I tell you. But so far, we are able to rectify them, and actually, after that, they actually spread it to the community. Because one thing for Southeast Asia, our community of players are very close. So they form guilds, they form clans, they form communities. Someone had good feedback, they'll spread it around, and that raised awareness and positive branding for us. So taking care of customers in Southeast Asia is something that we are focused on because that's what other global publishers are not really into. Because as Don said, tier one customers are the key for them. But for us, basically, our local customers are our key customers.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into that. And a lot of you were talking about localization, culturalization, having support. Can you give us like specific examples of maybe a game that you published and of the approach that you take towards localizing, culturalizing for specific markets in Southeast Asia? Yeah,
Okay.
go. Let's start with Robin this time.
Okay, the other way around. So for Asiasoft, we had good experience in publishing PC games from Korea, Japan, China, even from US. So first thing always is text translation. So we need to translate the text, localization. But localization is not just text, but the key thing are all the events and activities within the game that suits the players. So from our experience from the PC side, we had brought that over to mobile. So we cater events that are very local, like what Don said, Songkran, the biggest event in Thailand, the Water Splashing Festival. So during that period, all the local game publishers, developers will actually cater something very special for the players during that time. Or like Chinese New Year or during the Ramadan period. So different country has different festive season. So we need to localize and culturalize the game for the users. Even if the game is a Chinese martial art game, kung fu game, I still can launch it in Indonesia or Thailand or Philippines, but I just need to change it to cater for the local players. So the community will actually find it more appealing to them because it's something that they can relate to.
Okay.
Okay, so how we approach localization besides the text, I think the text is very standard and very obvious. But because Southeast Asia is made up of 6 countries, and when we do a launch in Southeast Asia, you get players from all over. And because each set of users, the users from each country behaves differently, and from that initial set, and if you get featured on Apple and Google, you get a whole bunch of these users and you can do your UA. And eventually you can isolate which countries tend to do better for you. I think the logical strategy would be to optimize your game in terms of localization and culturalization for specific countries. In this case, for example, we found that Singapore and Thailand is one of the best countries for a particular game. And that's when we go beyond just creating events for them, beyond just creating characters that they're familiar with. We go in and really recreate systems. We introduce new systems into the game that's not originally available in the host country. One of the key differences between us and a traditional publisher is that because we have a development background, so we can actually develop new content. And the original Japanese title, for example, would have more gacha elements. That's the main monetization. We would go in there to integrate things like subscription models, new quest systems, new ranking systems, which is actually very relevant in Southeast Asia. There are a lot of gaming patterns in Southeast Asian players, especially for certain countries, that reflect what you find in Chinese games, for example. And that's the reason why a lot of Chinese publishers are also doing very well in Southeast Asia. If you look at the top 50 grossing, you probably see 15 to 20 titles that are Chinese origin. So the approach really is different, and based on that, and of course via A/B testing, via your analytics, you'll be able to see whether or not it makes sense. And if it does, then you continue doing that. I think this is quite different compared to publishers of certain countries. Like, say if you just publish in Japan, you cater for that market and you only need to care about that. But because every Southeast Asian country behaves and accepts games differently, you never really know how well it's going to do until you launch it all. And when you do, then you find that certain countries tend to gravitate better. The players gravitate better to your game, and then you culturalize it that way. But I think that's how we approach it.
All right. Thanks, Don. David?
I think it's localization and culturalization is easier said than done. Depends on the size of the company. So you would never think about putting it in Indonesian or Thai or Vietnamese at the start. So the first thing that usually you do in the test launch is just launch it in English. If it does well, go to a Chinese. Right? In the previous game that I published, I did 12 languages simultaneously. But that took army of people. And I launched in Southeast Asian territory. Actually, the result was good. In some countries, in Thailand, it actually resulted in a drop after we put in the Thai language, which was a mystery. Yeah, but we ended up 4th largest publisher in the region just with one title in terms of grossing charts. So yeah, we did something right, we did something wrong. Sometimes it's not good to change the title too much. So from my perspective, at the moment, I'm helping to take some Sega titles, some Japanese company titles, and looking at quite a lot of other titles. But every single title that we look at, of course, now we're cherry picking those from the top 50, top 20 charts in Japan itself. Definitely, we choose the best, right? And I've seen from examples in other titles that are top 10 ranking, but when they go global, they can't make it. They can't make it because people try to change the game too much, such that it becomes less delightful, less fun. They try to add in a lot of westernized art, but in the first place, people love it because of what it is, right? Brave Frontier was a pixel 2D art. First time most people looked at it, they say, are you crazy? People are going towards 3D. But it ended up one of the top 9 grossing titles in the world, and that was a surprise, right? But I think many of the successes is due to how we actually build the community around the title, and the community and through the social viral elements that was built into the game actually help it to grow. And I also think that the other thing, big difference between our players here in the East, maybe in the West now, is I introduced something called the autoplay button that was not there in the Japanese version of it. At first it was huge opposition against it. But after that, it was adopted into the Japanese version as well and into titles across the region. So yeah, I think it's easy to say, let's do culturalization, let's go for events. But when you have a single global build, cost is the main issue. Single global build with 12 languages is not viable in the short run, or with small companies, because you have to maintain those 12 languages. Every time you have an update, you have to change every single one. And thus that amount to sufficient revenue to justify that localization. When I did Chain Chronicle, it was 1.7 million words. Translation from Japanese to English was 250,000 US dollars per language. Could you do 12 languages with that? And you don't even know whether it's going to be successful. So yeah, it has to be practical in some ways. And when you see that the market has sufficient traction, then you would want to go into certain localization. But it's a huge challenge in that sense, because with a single global server, and events cannot be timed according to time zones, right? The US guys will get upset when you set an event in Asian time. So all these considerations. But the easiest way is to just hand it to one of us to do it for you.
Okay, before we
focus on
move to Niel, just a follow-up question for David. So you talked about a small army of people on the support operation side. Can you give us an idea of what that infrastructure looks like? How many people or what kind of functions?
The last title I had 90 people in customer service and community management, running 3 shifts, 5 different teams, 24 hours, 7 days a week. The operation team was 30 people just to run that. But then, of course, that's a huge title.
And the 90 people is for global audience.
Global audience.
Okay.
All English-speaking world with customization and localization within the Southeast Asian territory and probably within Europe. Right? So it is a massive team. Plus, every time when you want to launch a title, you know that you have to put in probably 20 SDKs.
Yeah.
You want your analytics, your stability, anything that you want to put in, right? There's 20 SDKs, and it always causes a lot of problems because sometimes it works in this country, it doesn't work in another country, so it's multi-region QA that is really important. You have to test in this region. But most larger developers don't think of Southeast Asia even as a viable territory. In recent years, I think that's going to change when you see CAGR of 50%, right? You get minus 1% growth in Japan, right? You get hardly any growth in the US, and there's 400,000 apps on the 2 app stores, right, at any point of time. So you come up with the best game in the world, you put it onto the platform. It only gets seen if the platform owners want it to get seen. Otherwise, you have to spend millions of dollars to go acquire your own users. And we're still fraud. Right? 30% of all the user acquisitions are now fraud. It's proven to have fraud. So you're paying 30% for nothing, for bots to download your game, and on top of that, the next day you lose 60% of that. So most of all your hard-earned money is thrown into things that don't really matter. So which is why we came up with a completely free cross-marketing platform that if you put your app onto our platform, you get free cross-promotion and marketing. You get user acquisition for free. Find out about it tomorrow at 1 p.m.
All right. Niel?
Okay, I very much agree with David on this one, and I'll say it out loud. For the vast majority of titles, it probably doesn't make sense. Like especially for the mobile titles and the casual titles, it probably doesn't make sense to do a fully localized version for the Thailand or Malaysian market. With that said, I think there's a lot of other like low-hanging fruit that you can do in order to make a title appeal to these Southeast Asian countries. Like, you've talked about Songkran, and just running a campaign specifically for Songkran for a specific title is something that a marketing guy can do. Make some banners, make some campaigns, make some offers specifically for those events, and other stuff that can be done for these countries. I'm talking about Western titles that we want to launch or we want to make additional money in the Southeast Asian markets. There are other stuff that you can do, like Google has now opened up localized pricing and sub-dollar offers. And I think one of the things that we need to do, especially for these countries, is that vast majority of developers don't even know that like Google has already covered telco billing for like maybe 70% of the
players
telcos.
don't know either.
And
right?
the players, the developers don't know, so more players don't know about it. So it's just, it's more about localizing the developers and launching these sub-dollar campaigns just to get these players to know about, I can already pay and I can already spend my first pesos or baht or whatever in these countries and get them to convert, and in the future, it's about growing the market, and growing the market is about educating these players that there are games out there where I can where you can spend on.
Right. Quang?
I think most of the thing you guys already talked about that, but so and let me make some specific case for Captain Strike for we do for whole Southeast Asia and a game example for only Vietnam. So for Captain Strike, because the game has not so many language, so we able to put 6 language in one client, and then user can choose from beginning. They can choose from English, from Bahasa, different Bahasa from Malaysia and Indonesia. Also for Thai language, also Vietnamese language, whatever they want. So inside the game, we reduce a lot of text. We reduce a lot of appear for text for them. So they only can see few text on that and don't bother them much about the translation. So mostly they enjoy the game. So that's the way we do with the Captain Strike with a multi-language in one single client. But for Vietnam, let's say we localize a game from China to become like that. Usually take us for 2 months from localized translation, design the UI and button, and also the choosing the phone, because the phone also very important for that to appear. And then we input the SDK in, then deploy the server and test deeply. So normally the developer will take 5 builds to 7 builds to finish a job for the final build to upload into Apple and Google Play. So for Vietnam's case, because the language quite, if you translate from English or any other language to Vietnamese to express all that is will be very long. So we had to find a way to cut it off. And it takes a lot of time on that. And sometimes the context of the translation is not matched with what we are trying to do. So we need to experience guy who has a deep, the experience on the kind of game before or understand about the content. For example, content of Kung Fu, they must understand some kind of skill. It's called very noisy or different. Not
So you had to hire a Kung Fu expert?
No. They need to read the Kung Fu fiction or watch a movie to understand the kind of coding, the skill or something like that and put inside that. I think in the Asiasoft is also facing the same thing on that way. We're trying to make it very familiar to the user, so that user can easy to understand and get adapt with that. And let's say, if you go here and try to do localization, better to find expert to try to help you. Should not do by just using the company translate that. It takes your time, and then you put inside the game, you go to test, and user will give the very awful feedback on that as well. If you don't use the expert guy who can understand how to really localize it. It's localized here, it's not just translation. It's really make the game, it's kind of like made from that country. That's what for case of Vietnam, what we do.
Okay, thanks so much, Quang. So for the next question, let's talk about something that David touched on earlier. So revenue and monetization. So we've seen a lot of big numbers, like the region is already over $1 billion. It's set to double. But if you talk to a lot of publishers, they're still not making any significant money in Southeast Asia. So number one, like what's going on? Is the money all going to Clash Royale or something? Or, and what are like specific examples on your and publishing experience? Like how do you monetize? How do you do the payments? Like how are you getting payments for your games?
I will take the case of MU, which Kundun published for Thailand and Vietnam as well, which revenue in Vietnam is cross over $3 million US, and Thailand I think is also the same. What they did is that they still using 80% on the local payment. We a prepaid card for both Vietnam and Thailand user pay through that, and 20% of revenues go to the Apple and Google Play. So I think normally we know this official report from global and many companies. They only got the report from the official channel like Google and Apple. So it's not reflect all the fact of the payment or the total revenue of this area. And let's say with 3 million, it's higher than Clash Royale and Clash Clan in Thailand, right? So of course it's much more higher than every other game also. So there's also, there's so many other games. We don't know about that. It's kind of gambling game. It's everywhere in Southeast Asia, and people doing the cash out on that. So we don't actually know, and it's still on the mobile. So that is very different. But Southeast Asia combined is very potential in the future. That's the reason why Chinese company come here, Japanese companies come here, and also Korean, and also all of us also trying to earn money from user, right, in a different country as well. So it's definitely potential for everyone to come, but it may be hard for people from Western style because it takes so far for them to try. But why not work with a local partner like us, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is about monetizing in local countries and what
Yeah.
you do, what platforms you integrate.
Yeah.
So, well, as I said a while ago, it's all about educating the players. Like, there was a point, I think it was like 3 years ago in Playlab's history, that we were integrating directly with the telcos, like in the Philippines, GlobeSmart, and like in other countries as well. And you know what at that time, Google hasn't officially announced that they were going to be integrating directly. And once they started that, you know, they're going to be covering the pains of just talking through telcos is it's painful. It takes a while. You know, paperwork and all the integrations that you have to do. But right now, it has become a lot easier for developers to like integrate Google's SDK, and you actually cover a lot of the telcos out there. So right now, how we actually really monetize is, you know, it's very easy. Like in the control panel, you can actually optimize your prices on a per country basis, and you can actually see if lowering your prices actually generate higher returns on these countries. So it's just about finding the sweet spot. Like, you know, if you have $1 in the US, it translates to 47 something pesos, just making it like 39 or 99 or 9.99 is a good way to do it. And we've also run tests in a couple of countries that, you know, just putting the logos of the telcos in there, like the AIS or the Globe, actually results in higher revenues in some cases.
Only putting
times
the
3,
logos.
just putting their logo and letting them know that you know, you can pay through these.
So definitely, there's still an
alternative
awareness
systems.
issue if
Yes,
that
it's
works, right?
definitely an awareness issue, and even in countries like Thailand, the last campaign we ran with Songkran, just putting the logos of the telcos resulted in 5 times higher revenues
Wow, that's great
in the
info.
same campaign, just doing A/B tests of those.
Okay, so you're pretty much still using the standard, I would say, dashboards for Google Play and iOS and having good success from A/B testing.
Yes, it's all about, you know, doing a little bit amount of effort in towards maximizing your returns on those campaigns that we're doing.
Okay. David?
I want to state that third-party payment gateways don't work on Google and Apple. Otherwise, a lot of us are going to get in trouble. It is not, I mean, if you want to do third-party payment, there are a lot of providers out there that are very good at what they do, right? They have done that, and it's a really, really long process. The gateway that I built took me 10 months and an army of lawyers going through multiple contracts. So we have 12 gateways integrated, 234 countries, 160 channels, everything you can name, right, that provides convenience. So I cater to a lot of customers from Japan that have their titles on the top 100 charts. So a lot of them are not thinking of even going overseas due to, 1, language. 2, they don't even know how to do a forecast chart on how much money we're going to spend to get into Southeast Asia region. So how can they even propose to their management to go publish something? 3, they think that the market is not monetizing because maybe from the previous tests, it's not monetizing because they're not exploring third party. So there's a lot of interest in that area for that. But I think the most important point that we always point out to them that even if you don't localize the game, the most important thing is to localize both the support and the marketing material, because that's where you spend $1 million building the game, but you spend 5 to 10 million on the marketing. But yet you try to market to people in Thailand and Indonesia with English. It doesn't really work. You have to localize the banners. Usually when I run a campaign, I have over 100 variants of each banner, right? And then we do A/B testing, and then we do optimization based on that. And that would help you to reduce your costs. And that cost is 5, 10 times more than what you ever spent, right? Monetization to me is afterthought. It's a good to have. I want to be a $1 billion company, but that's not the key goal, right? The key goal is to really bring delightful games to the market. So we are constantly searching out there for the best titles, and then we are constantly helping them with our experience on advising them on how they can make their title better in order to squeeze out that extra percentage of retention, the extra percentage of conversion. But at this moment, what I find in Southeast Asia is that a lot of the money is coming from ad revenues, right? Because 97% don't pay. In some cases, for casual titles, it's 99.4%. You get a 0.6% pay rate on those titles. On a title that you spent so much time and effort and money to build and get 0.6% of the total population. The rest of the people are consuming your server space. It's consuming your CDN, and CDN is really expensive in this part of the world if you do it correct, right? You have 10 million people downloading 500 megabytes. That's a huge amount of CDN costs and DLC that you have to pay for, and yet none of them are paying you 1 single cent. So make those cheapskates pay. Make them click, make them download, make them watch a 30-second video. And I think that would give you more revenue than anything else because you're not collecting money from them.
Right.
It's difficult for them to open up their wallets, right? So either you make your game more delightful, build something like Clash Royale, right? Give them an easy way of paying you, support them really, really well. Otherwise, I don't think that it's going to be a rosy picture for us in this industry here.
Okay, Don?
So let me just talk about the ad revenue part of it. I think it's clear to say that a lot of publishers, when they launch games, they try to stay away from monetizing using ads. The point is, I think for us at least, for Questrop, we don't do that so much because we don't see the point in spending money on user acquisition and then driving the users away via ads. And also because the whole process, you actually lose about 20–30% in between. I think for casual games to monetize using ads, that makes sense, especially because they don't have a high conversion rate. I think for us, we focus on trying to increase that conversion rate. Integrating third-party payment definitely helps. For us, it really depends. We've heard cases of some publishers that get 60–80% increase in, 60–80% of their revenue is from third-party payment. For us personally, we've seen something like 10–20%. It really depends, and also I think, and I know for a fact that Google is making a lot of moves integrating with third-party payments like telcos. I'm pretty sure that they're already fully integrated with DTAC in Thailand, and I think they're partially integrated with AIS. But I also agree on the fact that a lot of users don't know that. They probably don't even know how to use it, and that's a big problem. I think it's a bit of a mystery for me why the telcos don't actually promote much about their integration with the stores. But for the developer and the publisher, that's something that we can do. And in the games and all that, like if it's integrated, something I assume you can actually publicize that, even though Google is, in the past they were rejecting all these third-party payments. But if they're integrated, then I guess it's legal on the store, right? So I think it really depends on the game. And at the end of the day, like this third-party payment business. You're always against one thing, right? Because the free-to-play market, it's a whales market. The whales spend 50% to 70–80% of total revenue that you generate in the game. For us, it's something like 73–75%. And the truth is, whales, many of these guys do have credit cards. Many of them don't, yes, but then there's still a sizable amount. With regards to how much you should spend and, how much you can expect from Southeast Asia. I think the market is still much smaller than the tier 1 countries outside of Southeast Asia. But the truth is that the amount of commitment that you spend in marketing in this region is probably a lot smaller. And because it's a lot smaller, you don't expect your tens of millions if you spend like 100,000, right? But because of that, the ratio between the profit and the revenue and the cost, it's more acceptable and therefore lower risk. And that's one of the reasons why people come into Southeast Asia, where you don't have to spend huge amounts of marketing compared to the US or Europe or Japan. You can test it out. You can do small placements and you can see whether or not it makes sense. And if it does, then double down on it. And that goes to show, I mean, like, for example, we take Netmarble, for example, right? And, you know, Robin has already mentioned they've done amazing, like, TV commercials. I was at a dry cleaners the other day, and that TV commercial said 7 nights, like, at least 20 times, right? 7 nights, 7 nights, 7 nights. And just like 2 weeks ago, I ate a sandwich bought from 7-Eleven, and that 7 nights was on the sandwich, right? You know, they're really doubling down on that country, and, you know, using all forms of marketing. And for what? Because they're making money. And my guess is that Thailand is probably one of the top markets globally for revenue. Exactly how much, we don't know. I think there's a talk coming up in June, organized by Adways, and I think that Marble will be, hopefully they'll be sharing some numbers, we don't know. But it's interesting. And so I would say for Southeast Asia, lower risk, but yes, and potentially high returns, and the market is growing. So if you don't go in now, you're going to wait till it's saturated and go in. I think it's be too late.
Or speak with one of you guys to go in, right?
Exactly.
All right, Robin.
Okay, well, it's more like summing up. Everyone has mentioned all the key things to take note. Okay, Southeast Asia, I think the key thing here is credit card penetration rate is very low. We are still like maybe 5% or less, except for Singapore where we are higher, but the rest of the countries are very, in Philippines, Vietnam, or Indonesia. So third-party payment is always an option. And why third-party payment is there compared to other countries is we had the PC game phase where players actually goes to convenience store, 7-Eleven, Family Mart to buy all these scratch card, pins, and actually top up on the game. So it's a habit, and users have been educated that way to pay for in-app purchases. So when mobile games come into the Southeast Asia region, the only option that app stores provide is only credit cards. So most of players don't have credit cards, and publishers like us will be thinking, oh, how do we sync the two together? So we have actually third-party payment system, APIs that integrate with mobile games. So that enables us to get users to pay for the game. So over the years, Google and Apple has realized that. So Google has taken a very big move, integrate with doing a direct carrier billing with all the key countries here, and also reducing the price. For example, the $1 US, actually it costs a lot to a teenager or kid in Indonesia or Philippines. It means a meal or more than a meal to them. So asking them to pay $1 is very painful. So the guy needs to go hungry for 1 meal just to pay for 5 bottles of potion. So Google actually saw that, so they introduced $1 pricing, and actually that was a common practice for PC games. So we actually pricing very low. Like in Philippines, we had items as low like 10 peso, which is like 30 cent US, 20 cent US, that caters to the market. So that's, again, that's localization and culturalization of the game to suit their local market needs. So users are educated that way. We have nurtured them over the last, I did 10 years for PC games. Now with mobile games coming in, they are still doing that, the same thing. So direct carrier billing helps because they see, oh, something I can use to pay with my phone. So, and down the road, more users will get, actually they will get used to direct carrier billing. And also one behavior about Southeast Asia users, those who had credit cards sometimes are reluctant to give out the information. A lot of fraud, a lot of phishing by games or whatever. So there's fear that, oh, information from the credit cards will be stolen. Or on the other hand, some credit cards are rejected because like PayPal, oh, Indonesia, some cards, they find that, oh, this could be fixed. So they want to pay, but they can't pay to credit card. So what should I do? Oh, okay, I go to take out my phone and just pay for it. So in terms of monetization, right now it's just actually a very early phase, starting phase, where we are educating users to pay more through different means. We are telling users that credit card is not just the mean to pay for mobile games. There are more things that we can do with it.
Okay, I think that's all the time we had, but thank you everyone. Really good information about the region, and some of our panelists here have other talks to talk deeper about what they do. And we don't have time for a Q&A, but you can approach them after this talk. So thank you again, everyone.